So very excited to be presenting today. As you can see, broadcasting live from my home in West Austin, and glad to have everyone here attending. Few of the faces or names I see here are familiar to me. Some of you very experienced SEO, some of you are new to me, some of you clients of TrustRadius, but thank you all again very much for coming. So today going to walk through just kind of the story of TrustRadius from an SEO growth perspective. Tell you a little bit about myself. So I've got about 15 plus years doing SEO and digital marketing. I like to say I've been doing this since the internet started and pre-Google. So I've kind of seen everything and touched a lot of things, been both on the agency and brand side. So a lot of experience with all different types of sites of all different sizes. That's kind of got me to where I am today. Hundreds of millions of organic visits across all those sites through the years. I'm also the founding chairman of the State of Search Conference that's hosted every year in Dallas, featuring a wide range of speakers across the country, and speak to a lot of other industry events as well throughout the year. Don't get to do as many of these webinars, but excited to do this regardless, and excited about the packed house we had. So I'm gonna go ahead and kind of get started and let you guys know a little bit about what we did at TrustRadius to set the stage. I started back here at TrustRadius back in October. And prior to that, the team had engaged with a consultant to kind of figure out what we need to do to move SEO forward. It was something that had just been stagnant at TrustRadius, and they knew they needed to invest in it. And so the decision was made, let's start with an audit while we bring someone on board to kind of lead this function in-house. And that was my role. And again, that started back in October. Since then, we've more than tripled the traffic and continuing to see great gains. And so really what I'm gonna walk you through is what that story was for us, what you can learn from it. And as mentioned, ask questions in the chat. We'll be looking at those throughout the thing and also have some time for Q&A at the end. So as mentioned, first step in this process was really for us an SEO audit. That original audit from a technical standpoint was done by an outside consultant. So I came into kind of that being ready, which saved me some time to kind of hit the ground running and really appreciated that. But there's a few different ways you can go about this. If you're working with an agency, they can provide that. If you've got a consultant, they can provide that, or an in-house team. And so we kind of started with that consultant kicking us off, but then ownership from an in-house perspective. It's something that I've been doing in-house for 6+ years now, and really actually, coming from an agency background, think that in-house can be a little bit more valuable, but I'm a little bit biased in my view on that. But the main reason is just ownership and dedication to the effort. And that's one of the things we really wanted here at TrustRadius was a full focus on this, something that we could control. So the in-house model really worked for us. So once I came on board and kind of got started with that technical audit, proceeded to kind of look at our content and our links and PR strategies as well and audit those to come up with a strategy for how we're going to move forward. And basically, one of the core things that we started off with was the belief that we've really got to make SEO a part of the company DNA. Majority of sites out there see anywhere from 70% plus of traffic coming from organic sources, and that holds true at TrustRadius as well. So knowing that SEO is going to be the lifeblood of traffic, we said, okay, we've really got to make sure that everyone is on board with SEO, understands it, and is fighting towards this common goal of increasing our traffic. So how do we do that? A few different ways, but really it's making sure that teams collaborate, build relationships, and the primary relationships we focused on were with our product team, our engineering team, the marketing team, and then our content teams. And what we did with those is work in different ways with each of them to set up training specific to them to understand how what they do impacts SEO at the end of the day, what best practices they should be aware of, and again, getting them a part of that process. So making sure we're reporting insights back to them, sharing data back with them, anything like that that we can do to really help make them a part of the process. And to that end, merchandising wins back, showing data, a lot of different things. We even went as far as embedding ourselves within the product and engineering teams so that we could sit right next to each other, make sure we're hearing what they're talking about, and be able to provide SEO advice as they're discussing different tickets and changes they want to make to the site. So again, really making that SEO a DNA change to the corporation in our team meetings every week, making sure we're explaining things and getting everyone on board with that. And so that was really a big win for us. And then the other side of that was enabling our teams with data so they could really learn it. So went beyond the teams listed here, even our sales, our customer service. We wanted them to really understand what are the keywords, how are we winning, where are we not winning? Because one of the great things about the keyword data is that it really allows you to understand your audience in a much deeper way and understand the intent behind what they're trying to do. The queries that they use that lead to your site are going to tell you a lot about the answers they're seeking from your site, and therefore how your content needs to answer that, how your site needs to be structured, and all of those things. So that was a big part of it for us, was that SEO education. And I'll actually go back. It looks like we had a question related to an in-house SEO audit. There are a lot of templates like that, and we can follow up with specific examples after this. What I'll say is that SEO is art as much as it is science, and everyone's going to have a different view on that. One of the core things that I'll reference as part of being important to the SEO audit from a technical standpoint is the use of Google Search Console. The reporting in there is going to be very valuable because it's going to show you a lot of things, where you have issues, where you're not getting indexed, where pages are duplicated, site crawls. There's a lot of different things that go into that. I think in our case, we probably had 60+ pages of insights that came out of that audit. And it's not unheard of to have some of those go up to 100+. So there's a lot of different templates, and I think it's going to be a case-by-case basis. But once we do the summary of this webinar, we'll make sure to include examples of things that we think work well for that. As for consultants, question related to that, there are a lot of great consultants, but the one thing I'll say is that look for someone who specializes in what you do. There's a lot of generalists, and there's people that also focus specifically on certain verticals, certain types of websites. Maybe there's B2B SEO experts. So do what, work with the people who are going to understand your situation better, and make sure that they have case studies and other references that they can point to, because you really want to do your homework. There's a lot out there, again, to that SEO is art and science that can go wrong. So you really want to make sure you work with someone who specializes to what you do, and maybe not just a general practitioner in many ways. Couple other questions related to site visitors, searching, keyword analysis. We'll get to that in coming slides, so stay tuned for some answers related to that. Actually, next slide. So keyword research. After we had done a lot of the education, again, knowing that data is core to everything you do. These days you'll hear that keyword research is dead or it's evolving, but regardless, the concept of understanding queries and how people ask is the crux of what keyword research is, and you really need to make sure that there is a core element of that in any strategy you push forward. So that was one of the first things we did as well. We built what we call a keyword library here internally. And what that is, you'll see a couple of examples here on the screen, but we took each category that we cover and we looked at what are all the keywords within that category, what is the search volume attached to those, and we went through all of those keywords to say which of these actually matter to our audience. Are these keywords that we want to target or not, so that we have kind of our set list of priority keywords and modifiers that we want to go after. Because without that, there's really no way to gut check yourself or measure results back to how you're doing on those. You can't grow your keyword breadth without knowing what that keyword set is. And that keyword library attaches to a lot of different things, and we use it in a lot of different ways. These are just some small examples from there, but again, we can see the quantity of keywords in any group of keywords we're looking at. We can see search volume, and then within one of those categories, we're looking at the phrases that are more common across all of those. So what are the things that people are looking for more commonly? So in this case of e-commerce, we see that e-commerce website is a phrase that's our most prominent. People are looking for best e-commerce. There's a lot of how-to type of keywords, e-commerce sites, free. So we really look for all of those modifiers to understand the priority of those within anything we're going to do on those pages, because again, that helps us to prioritize. If we're going to target something, we know we need to make sure there's content or functionality that's able to answer these queries. So you've really got to deep dive into that, and again, make sure that you've identified the relevant keywords as well as the phrases that stand out in those. So what are the topics that come out of those? And that's another way to think about it. It's not just keywords, it's really topics. And so what are the topics within those groups that you see frequently happening? And that's why we look at this frequency of phrase as kind of an indicator for that. So after that keyword library was kind of done, what we did is we said, okay, here's our keyword research. Now let's look at how we perform. And there's kind of two sources of truth for us in that scenario. The primary being Google Search Console, because it is going to show you what are the keywords you are driving traffic for and that you rank page 1 for. What it doesn't do as good of a job is showing things that maybe you're page 2 or beyond, that you're close to winning. And if you just optimize those, that you could be ranking better. So we use third-party tools for that, and SEMrush and Ahrefs are kind of the common. We used SEMrush primarily. I'd say to that end, research which of those has better data in your specific category, and you'll learn a lot from that. But again, what we did is brought that in to say, okay, for all of these keywords that we have, now where do we rank? And if we're ranking, what's the traffic we're driving, so we can understand share of voice. So we know the search volume, we know what we're driving, and we can start to understand what percentage of that we're actually attaining. So that is a success metric for us, is looking at that share of voice. And what's neat here is that there's certain tools within SEMrush or others where you can do content gaps reports. But imagine this keyword library being a content gap on steroids that you own, because it's not comparing you to necessarily another website or a group of websites. It's comparing you to the list of keywords you actually care about. And so that's why we wanted to house all of that to be able to judge success as we grow. And how we did that is we use Google Search Console via API. Supermetrics is the tool that we specifically use. And it's a great way to ingest API data from Google Search Console straight into Google Sheets. And there's a lot of reasons we love that. One, that it can automatically update inside of a sheet that's shared with other people in real time. It also just gives us the ability to kind of add in other data and other things, but you can pull that into Google Data Studio or other tools as well to kind of house that. But really you want to warehouse all of this data together so that you can combine all of these different data sets into one. A couple questions I'll address. So keyword analysis, we are using Google Search Console to get that keyword query data. And as I mentioned, we're actually using the API because inside Google Search Console, you are limited to 1,000 rows of keywords or data, depending on what you're looking at. So you have to slice and dice it. Whereas with the API, you're able to ingest everything. So I always suggest using something that pulls via the API so you can get a full picture of that data. And then as mentioned, we did use SEMrush and Ahrefs for some additional keyword research. As in keyword phrase in this report, there's a question about an underscore. What we do is we actually, we keep the keywords just like they would be typed, and we're analyzing that way. So we don't look at any specific characters between those. And yes, we do use Google Sheets as a describe versus Excel because of the living nature of it and the fact that you can share it. We don't have to reproduce reports. It can automatically update that data on the daily and refresh automatically for us. So you don't have to go create a spreadsheet and share it out. All of that can run in the background. So it's a seamless, frictionless way for us to maintain dashboards that are pulling directly out of Google Search Console, Google Analytics, and our other data sources. So again, keyword modifiers are a big way that we start to look at those and those topics to understand. But some other things we did on the data side to do a deep dive was not just the keywords. We were looking at our competitors. We wanted to understand how they were getting traffic, what their traffic consisted of. For our business, our clients sometimes judge the quality of our site and our competitors based on the amount of traffic they have. In many cases, it can be confusing when you throw out a website number, like we can say we're at 1 million, but what really matters is the traffic to our clients in the categories that they're being targeted into. So we wanted to take that same view on our own data to understand how we stacked compared to competitors, looking at a specific page type. So this was really easy to do in SEMrush for most sites because most sites have a pretty straightforward subfolder naming convention. And same thing, we use APIs to pull data out into Google Sheets as described, but what we can do is ingest on a monthly basis all of the pages we see our competitors ranking for, and then group those together. So this chart on the top right, we would look at ourselves for our blog, for our category pages, our product pages, and our comparison pages. And we do that for some of our competitors, G2, Gartner Peer Insights, so that what we're able to do is set a benchmark of success. And in this case, it's how many visits per page within that category that we're seeing as compared to our competitors, and that's pulling from that SEMrush data. And again, what that does is it helps us to set that benchmark up front of, okay, this is the yield we think we need to see to be able to win. And as you can see here, we've achieved that where our category pages, our product pages, our comparisons are now outperforming. So what we had to do in the case of comparison pages was say, okay, we're doing well, we're winning, but who are the other sites that we should now compare ourselves to? And what we did is looked at other sites that are blogs and other things that weren't in our industry to use those as a benchmark to start to compare and making our version of those pages better. So that was a great tool for us, was to really, again, understand each page, each type of page. And then this chart below shows the types of queries that both ourselves and our competitors are ranking for. So what are those modifiers? What percentage of our queries have that in it? And what percentage of our traffic we're seeing have that modifier in it? And we took a look at that to benchmark against our competitors to find what are the modifiers that maybe we're not winning in. Do we need to create new page types or target those a lot better? API tool for keyword research. We had used, again, Google Search Console, SEMrush, and Ahrefs, which are identified right here on this page. So what we did is then, again, came up with this yield per category per page with a goal, which we've now won. So we are beating our competitors on those per page, per category level basis. Another thing that we did is look at our CTR curve to understand where we need to optimize, and we'll go into that in the next slide. But again, big focus on keyword modifiers, big focus on keyword rankings, and then even content analysis, which we'll get into as well. So here's the CTR curve analysis. So what is CTR curve at a high level? That is understanding if you rank in position 1, what is your likely click-through rate? If you rank in position 2, what is your likely click-through rate? So on and so forth through that first page of Google. This is built into tools like SEMrush and Ahrefs, where based on that ranking, they predict the amount of traffic you'll get based on the search volume. The problem with that is that it's a very general curve that applies across all websites. But as you'll see from our data, it just doesn't hold true. So what you've always got to do is make sure you understand your click-through rate curve and how you're going to yield clicks from Google based on how you actually rank versus relying on what those tools do. So we actually take it a level deeper. We don't just look at the click-through rate for our website, but we look at it by each page type. So in this example, this screenshot on the right, it shows for February, our product pages had a position 1 click-through rate of about 18–19%, and then the amount of clicks we would get, but we can understand that click-through rate curve for that specific page type. Whereas our comparison pages, where we compare two products, this product versus that product, we have a way higher click-through rate, 50%. So the value of a position 1 for this page type versus this page type is double, almost triple. And the reason that this matters is this helped us to prioritize which things we did first and where we put our effort. Because the interesting thing is that products for us actually have a way higher search volume. So if you look at the impressions, these numbers by far beat out the search volume we're seeing on our comparison pages. But due to this click-through rate curve, we know we're going to yield more traffic from those terms based on the ability to drive a better click-through rate. So focusing on lower search volume terms was actually the smarter decision for us, but we wouldn't have known that had we not looked at the click-through rate curve to understand what we're going to yield from those searches. So again, high volume search terms may not be the end all be all for you if you're not going to be able to drive a high click-through rate. So this type of analysis was very important for us. The other interesting thing in looking at this that we learned for our site specifically across all of the different page types is that a 2-position increase for a keyword could yield about double the traffic. So a move from position 5 to position 3, we go from a 2.45% click-through rate to a 5%. And you see that in the clicks, 2,500 to 5,500. So again, that also helps you to prioritize. If I've got something in position 3 and take it to position 1, it's going to have huge gains as far as traffic. And it helps you kind of set those goals of what you need to do to march up. Because it's not always just about being number 1. Sometimes those 2-position increases for a term that you're seeing high impressions for can yield great results for you. So how do you do this? Same thing, using APIs from the Search Console data. In this case, Supermetrics is the tool that we use again, and it will actually do this for you. It's really a one-click thing. You tell it what page type you want to look at, hit go, and it will spit this data right back out. So we're able to do this within 30 seconds, have this answer across our page types, and we plot this across each month to understand what that click-through rate curve is, because as we know, Google rolls out a big core algorithm update about every quarter, And in doing so, it changes some of the SERP layouts. So that's going to impact that click-through rate curve. So you need to know what's real today versus what may have been real prior to the latest update. So another thing we do is very focused on keyword rankings and attaching the different data sources. I know predominantly people do use third-party tools for keyword rankings, SEMrush or a handful of other tools. But my problem with that is it only represents a very small subset of your keywords. So, SEMrush, maybe you can track a couple thousand, but in reality, for our site, we see well over 100,000 keywords. So how can you keep a pulse on that? Well, what we do is we, again, pull via API into Google Sheets, and this is a screenshot of what you're seeing there, where for each keyword, we're able to sort by clicks in the last 7 days, other metrics, impressions, click-through rate, but the trend line is what we really care about because we want to see what's going on at a quick glance for our high-value terms. And these are going to change, and that's why, again, some of those third-party tools, you may not be tracking the right keyword, you might not have this visibility. So if you're ingesting everything, you're going to be able to see this. So what we look at is our most recent rank, and then we're comparing that to the week prior, as well as looking at kind of that ranking trend. And again, this is across all keywords, and we'll segment this by page type, segment it by modifiers, because you can do all of that filtering within Sheets. We'll see what pages are ranking, so you can filter down to a specific page. And then what you don't see here is, out to the right of this, we pull in a lot of other metrics as well, Google Analytics engagement data. So is there a high bounce rate or other things that could be leading to these? So very quickly, you could look at this and see if a rank change, went up or down. Was it user-based? Do we see high clicks? Do we have a low click-through rate? Which gives you a quick way to analyze what could be happening and what are the levers we want to pull to drive change for these keywords or diagnose an issue when we see one. It looks like we had a question. What was the name of the click-through rate tool we mentioned? Again, Super Metrics. I think it costs about $100 a month to pull in all of that data via API, but is probably the best money we spend on a tool here at TrustRadius. So again, get very focused on your keyword rankings. There's a lot of this you can do in Google Data Studio as well. Alita Solis, she's a consultant that has produced a lot of cool Google Data Studio tools. But similar problem that I run into there with Data Studio versus Sheets is that, again, maybe you're only seeing 1,000 results or things. You're not gonna be able to filter it the same way. So personally, I'm a fan of Sheets. I know Kaylin on our team loves it as well and working with Supermetrics. But again, great value for us to be able to see things. We also do this conditional formatting so that we can just quickly see what's the good and the bad. Quick highlight every day when we jump in a dashboard. This keyword's down, these are up, so that we can kind of judge at a quick level what's the pulse for that day. And that is something, again, back to the DNA. You've really got to treat your SEO data as a heartbeat for your website and understanding what that pulse is on the daily so that you can really start to learn what's going to drive change for you and what's working and what's not working. So beyond keywords and kind of that, one of the core things, as we mentioned outside of the technical audit, was a focus on content. So we all hear it, content is king. Google will tell you, build great content and people will come to it and will rank you best based on that. And we fully agree with that. So one of our big focuses is on high quality, long form user reviews. And then we use that content strategically across our site. And then where we're not using that user generated review content, our research team is providing that content. And we have that same high quality desire on that. So what we always do is work with this highest quality mindset, AKA, are we providing the best version of this piece of content that we've seen across the internet? And if not, what can we do to make that better? So are we in depth? Are we informative? And are we providing a clear path of action for the user to satisfy their needs? Again, going back to the fact that the keywords and those queries that we see in Google Search Console are what tell us what users are searching for. We need to use that to make sure that we're answering the questions we're seeing in that data. We're providing that back to them in the content. So again, using those modifiers, analyzing your data at scale is going to be way more effective for you to know what type of content your audience is going to need. And then again, leaning back in that keyword library to see what things, even if you're not driving traffic from yet, that you need to develop new content around in order to be successful in driving your overall share of voice. So focus on the users, but the other thing I'll add is that as much as you want to write it for the users, you are still writing for a bot. Google is very smart in the way that they can read things. They've got great artificial intelligence and natural language processing capabilities, but they aren't quite human. And I bring up that natural language processing because complex sentences are still a challenge for them to understand what exactly it is you talk about. So we've made that part of our process as well to make sure that our writing quality is very human friendly, but also bot friendly. There's great tools such as Hemingway app or Grammarly that help you to identify sentence structure issues to make those more simplified, because again, the bots are gonna have a better time understanding your content, just like a user would understand that content. So focus on the user, create high quality content, but don't forget that the bots have to read it too, so make sure that they can read it. So what's an example of how we view high quality long form content? Again, those reviews, typically we're averaging about 400 words in the reviews that we acquire from users, and that's something that we're very focused on. We ask a lot of questions in our reviews, and it's a harder process for some versus other sites in our space that may get about a fourth of that. But again, we feel that that quality of content is what's driving a lot of our SEO success, and that's why we're not going to sacrifice. So, you know, keeping that in mind, don't sacrifice quality for quantity. So blogging was another part of the content story, and something we kind of revamped. And in doing analysis, again, looking at our competitors, what we found is a lot of the blogs that they were producing really weren't relevant to their business. And we could go right on that content and try to grab volume just for volume's sakes and get visitors to our site. But there were two problems we found with that. One, it doesn't serve our audience. We're not providing value to our end clients. And two, we feel like long-term, that's not the right decision for Google to add in content that isn't relevant to our business to talk about the price of a book of stamps or other things aren't really in any way tied to a B2B buying process. So we felt like it was a short-term play that doesn't have long-term benefits. So we made sure to stay away from that. And what we did is we mapped our content across the buyer journey. Again, going back to that keyword library to say, here are the things they're looking for. Here's where we think they are in that buying stage. And then let's create that content that answers those questions. So it's leaning back on that keyword library to help prioritize based on the quantity of modifiers we see, as well as the volume attached to that in some cases, for what we wanted to give to our audience and make sure we satisfied their needs. So the fun thing here is that we actually have open sourced that strategy. So our process docs and all of that, if you go to go.trustradius.us/blog-content as seen here on the screen, we've got a great blog post we just put out this week kind of explaining what that looks like, how we analyze content, and how we write that to make sure it's optimized for SEO success. You can actually go into the Google Drive there and download all of those documents yourself, steal our strategies, ping us on it if you have questions. We'd love to help you out. So don't hesitate, and excited that we're able to share that with you guys. So product comparisons, this was another place that content really yielded great results for us. As I mentioned, we have high quality user generated content, and what we're able to do is use that to create these product comparisons, in this case Microsoft Teams versus Zoom. And those were performing well for us as we had seen some of those yields versus our competitors. But what we realized is we still, again, competing against blogs and others, that there was a layer of content that was missing. It was kind of a summary from us analyzing those products that would yield more benefit to the user, as well as provide some opportunities for us to capture featured snippets and get that position 1 there in Google. So what we did is we went back and introduced this kind of highlight section where we synthesized and summarized the data that was presented below these products to give the user just a high-level view. And in testing some of that, we rolled it out to a dozen or so of these pages. Found it led to great gains on the search engine side. But the other thing we do is we actually do a lot of user testing. We'll get into that later. But we polled our audience, and satisfaction for our users was also way higher by introducing this content. So again, users are what we're here to satisfy. We did that, and Google was able to reward us as well. So this content, was really useful for us to help drive more success on these. And what we now see is about a third of our traffic comes from these pages. And as we saw earlier, we have our best CTR from this type of content. So position 1 for us is about a 50% click-through rate when we rank on these. But it's also nice because this content is something that anyone can use. So I talk about us up top, but some examples from a customer of ours who is actually called Customer. And we see a lot of our clients using this as well, but they take our review content and they're embedding that into their site so that they have fresh, accurate, keyword-rich content, allowing them to rank on these terms as well. So in this case of Customer, they've got a page they created about customer versus Zendesk, and they did like us. They provided kind of a high-level synthesis of why they think their product is better than Zendesk. And then they actually pulled in customer reviews from our platform that talk about them versus Zendesk. So they were able to tag that content and specifically pull in content that was relevant to that specific page. So what was really great is that, again, they don't really have to create too much content. They create the evergreen highlight, and then based on the reviews we're gathering for them, feeding them in so that they've got fresh, keyword-rich content that allows them, as you see here, to rank on something customer versus Zendesk. So anyone researching Zendesk is now going to have an ability to kind of make sure, as customer may be the right source for me. So this is one thing I don't see enough brands and products doing right now, is really targeting themselves versus competitors, and maybe a little bit shy or fearful of any repercussions. But there's huge volume. Again, we're seeing a third of our traffic coming from these. So there's a great opportunity and a lot of traffic, especially in the current environment we're in, where people at home that you're making money decisions are a little bit tougher now, and you really got to do that in-depth research. So they're going to do a lot of this versus that, and understanding and diving into a lot more of these queries before they make a decision. So you really want to make sure you cover, again, that whole customer journey, can answer all of those queries. Couple questions related to this. What keywords were used to drive traffic to these comparison pages? It's typically product versus product. So Zoom versus Teams, or Teams versus Zoom. That's probably 70% of the types of queries we see on these pages, but there are a lot of other things that may come out of some of the content that's user generated. So Teams versus Zoom for small business, for enterprise, all these different modifiers that layer into that. Or is Teams better at a large group than Zoom? So it's going to be a whole lot of different queries and modifiers, but again, it's the concept of two things compared against each other. There's also a question as far as duplicate content. Short answer is no. How best? Duplicate content is always a fun one. Duplicate content is typically when the content is the same, but what we're talking about here is that a portion of the content is the same. The overall page is different. We've got different intro, they've got a different intro. Our page may not actually pull in the same quotes that they have. So we may have one of the same quotes, but then they've got the second one that's different. So by no means have we ever run into any duplicate content issues or any kinds of concerns on that end. And then as far as the penalizing, duplicate content is not a penalty, it's a filter. So if something were exactly the same, Google's got to make that determination of which one do I rank. But again, with these being different, they don't make that determination. Both can rank, and we do see that in this customer versus index or many others, where not only can we rank with that, but our customers can also rank with that same content when using it on their site, because again, it is slightly differentiated. Pieces of it are the same, but by no means is it considered duplicate content. So no, there are no concerns there from a penalty standpoint ever really with duplicate content. There may be a filter, but rarely run into that either. So another thing we did is we do a lot of testing. Title tags, it's always interesting how much you can yield from those. And literally the only change we made in this was to change title tags. And in our case, again, we're a product-driven site. We have page types that we can share a template approach to, but this can work for anyone, even a blog or anyone else testing title tags to see what's going to drive the most sense there. And actually, I'm going to go back at one question, the Microsoft versus Teams page we built, or is it something Google showcases? Yes, this is something we built. So yeah, that was a specific product, and going back to working with our teams and prioritizing it, we saw that this was a high value opportunity for us, so we leaned into this to make this page really good. Just to elaborate on a couple things, what you see here on the left is kind of a table of contents. We stuffed this page full of relevant user content, pros, cons, likelihood to renew, usability. Again, all things that we have data points on from our user generated content. So you can just see a portion of it, but you can kind of get an idea of the layer of information that we're pulling in on these comparisons. So title tag testing, back to that. Again, what we did is, it was pretty easy. So back to the way we sort our keywords and queries, we've got those in a stacked ranked order from volume, and we throw a new column in there, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, all the way down that. And that separates our traffic into similarly sized audiences. And then with those, we say, hey, engineering team, here are the 3 groups. go for this group, give this title tag, for this group, give this title tag, for this group, give this title tag. And then ultimately we launched that, and we're watching in Google Analytics 2 points. So if you notice here on the left side of this chart, we've got these 3 audiences. The blue line is showing the audience is a little bit bigger, and then the orange and green lines audiences are similar size. Here at the beginning of January, we launched this test, and that's where now these lines are going to diverge because they're not the same thing. So this is why they're staying the same, because these pages are all doing the same thing. Once we introduced the new title, what we saw right off the bat is this green group, this new test group. Blue was our control and orange was another test group. It started to move away from this other test group and moving even in some cases above our control, which we had never seen before. And so within, I think, 3 to 4 weeks, we quickly knew that our test 1 group was actually going to outperform, and then we rolled that change out across all of our sites. So as seen here at the bottom, some decent gains continued to grow, but then once we finally saw it happen, we applied that winner globally and saw huge gains, well over 50%, just from doing that one thing that was just a title tag test using Google Analytics. No tools, no fancy work. It was, let's put 3 things out there and see which one works. The other part of this is, again, focusing on the user, making sure that bounce rate, time on site, we weren't negatively impacting any of that, and that was also in line. We felt good about that, and again, made that change to roll it out. So what does this look like in Search Console? Basically about a 1 position increase, which led to a decent size average click-through rate, and then again, a good sized growth in clicks for us. So, in some cases that 2 position we could have doubled. In this case, it was a 1 position gain, but again, knowing that click-through rate data helps you to understand what you're going to yield from these. How do we choose our audience group? Let's say that question. Again, what we did is we look at that Search Console data. I'll go back, just quickly show that. So we would take something like this. We would sort it based on total, top to bottom. Insert a column in here that was just segment group, and we would go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So then you've got all your 1s, your 2s, and your 3s, and that way you have a audience size that's going to be somewhat similar between the 3. So it's real quick to just drag those, and now you've got those identified. You can filter to say, okay, show me everyone in my audience 1, show me everyone in my audience 2, audience 3 as well. Question back to team. So as mentioned, we have an in-house team. So it's a question as to how we're organized. Technically, let's see here. So there's myself and 1 technical SEO, and then we have 2 that are really on the PR side. So not a big team at all, really, from the SEO standpoint. But again, our focus there was to embed the SEO knowledge within everyone in the organization, so that everyone is part of that SEO team. And that's where we really saw the huge benefits. So now the engineers who have been trained, the product team who has this intense desire to understand the organic traffic data, the UX team to understand what is the user states that we need to answer for. So that DNA change is really how you make everyone a part of your SEO team. Another question on that title tag is, was 2020 added as part of the test? No, we didn't test that. We actually had already tested that previously to know that that was a best practice for us. So that was included as part of all of the groups. We just tested one specific thing. Did we say top, list of, or best product names? And what actually won out was list of top for us. So it's funny because you see a lot of people say target best, which is what we had been doing. But what we found out is that differentiating ourselves in the SERPs where everyone else was targeting the term best and we were now targeting list of top did 2 things. One, it identified that we're not a site that's just going to talk about 1 or 2 products. We have a full list, but also not saying best like everyone else. It gave us a differentiator. So small tweaks like that is what led to the win we saw in this case. So content testing, this is another thing we do. Updating old content, adding new content, restructuring content, moving elements around. When updating content, focusing on specific keywords. We do a lot of that as well. So we don't just go update content and hope it works. Again, we're measuring results back towards keyword library. And this is just an example of where we said, okay, there's a specific keyword we want to target. Let's go make changes to this content to target it. We made that change here on December 6th. 2 days later, we've moved up greatly in visibility for those keywords we were looking at and maintained ever since then. So again, test, but be very in tune with your data so that way you can understand what's working and what's not. And content's great. It's interesting in many cases. Once we update content and Google recrawls that, you're going to see those changes instantaneously. So this isn't like a site product change or other site change that could take time to see. A lot of times content updates can be very real time or close to it, and seeing those results. User testing. So this is also a big focus and something I'm very excited about that we do at TrustRadius, is that we're very focused on users and making sure that we're serving them well. And we're constantly looking to improve our product and make updates that are going to provide that experience for the user. So we kind of do this in two primary ways. As you see here on top, there will be a UX person, kind of what I'll call a lab usability test. They're saying, hey, you've Googled this, what are you going to do? What are your pains in this flow? And we analyze those on a one-off basis. And then the other side of that, once we learn from those and we build something, we'll take it and we use Optimizely to do an A/B test with our audience to validate what we learned from that test to see if it rolls out and holds true for our entire audience. So we're always trying to iterate to make our site better. And as we know, that is always a goal of SEO. You're serving the user. And so if you aren't working to satisfy your users, someone's going to come in and take your spot. There's going to be a new startup. Your competitor's going to do it. So, the always be testing mentality has got to be a part of what you're doing, and we fully embrace that here. And it's not just testing these titles. Again, it's back to the product and what we're doing in there and how we're working in that user experience. So the more we can satisfy the user, the more we're going to win on SEO. And we also embrace the scientific method. So we come up with hypotheses and outcomes, test against that, and make sure that we're very clear in what it is we're testing. So there's no ambiguity and that we know the results are coming from what we're looking at. But again, always have a test running. If you're not testing and trying to improve your site, you're doing yourself a disservice. We even, we drink our own champagne, eat our own dog food, whatever you want to call it. We test using, customer stories within our own content. Will it increase our conversion rate? A lot of those different things that we're telling our customers to do, we're doing ourselves. Because if you're not, again, you're not going to continue to evolve and draw in more customers. Question on content updates. How often do we update that? That's back to the data. We let the data guide us. When content becomes old and falls off and doesn't rank as well, it's a clear indicator for us that it's time to revisit that. Some content we designate quarterly, sometimes yearly. It just depends on it, but the data will guide you. And once you've done the upfront in-depth data analysis, it'll help to show you where did this content rank in the past? Is it still ranking there? If not, there's something wrong with it and we need to look at redoing that content. So back to the user testing and why it's important to really focus on what you're doing to the website. It's not just about keywords and site structure. It's, again, answering the users. So there was actually just a question of how do we know about where customers are in the customer value journey? Well, you don't always know that. These keywords can give you some indication, but you don't always know that. And so how do we approach that? We give paths back and forth across that user journey, no matter where they may come in, so that if we don't know and we think they're here, let's give them a clear path to where else they need to be. So an example of what I mean by that is a category page may be very top of funnel to many. Sometimes it's not. Maybe it's the last thing they're doing in their buying process. But from that category page, we give options to go back to our product pages if they're wanting to learn more about products, or from a product down to the review specifically within that and use cases understanding those products, or maybe it's a comparison page where they want to compare to other products. So every page we look at, we're always thinking about where else might this person want to go in that user journey and how can we get them there. So something to keep in mind is just look for understanding that journey, but how are you using that journey in your design so they can get back and forth no matter where they are on your site. So some other things that we've done on the technical side, rating schema. This is one that we rolled out across more of our page types that are product focused and saw great results from that. The other fun thing here is that most people don't realize if you're not a local business, if you're an organization or a product, a software application, you can show these on your site. You've got to use a third party such as TrustRadius, and we can feed these in. This is just an example showing of how we've worked with Cisco to allow them to use the ratings that they're getting through our site to show on their site as well. So this is a huge benefit for them to increase their SEO and their click-through rate. So we've got some data, should be coming back very soon from them on this. But again, just know that if you work with a site like TrustRadius, you too can have stars showing and increase your click-through rate, which, as we've seen, can be a huge driver for increased clicks to your website. So definitely reach out to us if you want to learn more about that. We're excited about that functionality. Another one that we've done from a technical side is FAQs. This is a new structured data that allows you to get this view you see here. So if you Google SEO platforms, we rank on page 1. But what's nice is you get all this extra real estate when you incorporate this FAQ structured data. We've also done some other things where in formulating this, it's not just FAQ structured data, but we've structured it with anchored jump links. So what does that do? It gets us this treatment here. What are the top rated SEO platforms? That's actually one of our SEO FAQs, but it's also a jump link within the page that gets featured here. So it's sort of, instead of a normal listing where we just have the one link to our site, we've now got that. We've got this additional jump link, and now all of this great content below where we can also put links into other pages or other relevant things within our site. So capturing more of this real estate was huge for us, and it's helped our click-through rate. We were the first mover in our vertical to do this. We've seen one site copy us and probably more to come. But lean into these new functions that Google gives you. They want you to use them for a reason. And this is an example of that, where we're able to do that to really own a lot of that real estate and feature the products on our site that that users are looking for. How do you implement FAQs? There's a Google structured data tool that will kind of explain this to you. So just look for that FAQ structured data Google, and you'll go to their best practices. Or separately reach out to me, and I did mention that to everyone. I'm on LinkedIn. By all means, message me, and we'll help get a lot of these questions answered too. Another big focus for us, we're a very large site. We could serve up millions of pages if we wanted to, based on the way our product works. But we wanted to focus on quality indexation. So what does that mean? That means only giving Google the pages that we know they value. How do you do that? The way we do that is we kind of score ourselves on an indexation rate. So we make sure all of the pages we want Google to index are served via sitemaps, and we segment those. And then we go into Search Console, which you see here in the top, and they have a coverage report where you can look at it by sitemap to understand how many they see as valid or excluded. And so you can get this ratio of how many they've indexed versus how many you've fed them. As you can see over here, we were pretty low in some areas. And so we worked on ways to either feed them less pages by no indexing them, or to improve internal linking and do other things to improve the quality on those pages so that they would then index them. So indexation rate is something we monitor on the monthly. Our goal is to 90%, but as you can see here, growth is always what's desired. So ideally, some of these would all be up at 90%. We're still working on that, and that's where we're going to continue to see growth. So make sure you're only giving Google the pages that matter, and this is what we kind of called a shrink to grow. If pages aren't getting traffic, they're not getting crawled, Google thinks they're low value, don't even feed them to Google, or look at ways to improve those pages. And then kind of the last piece of our SEO was digital PR. Promotion of your content is very important in your success in ranking well. Links still correlate highly to success for highly competitive keywords. Low volume keywords, low competitive keywords, maybe not so much, but you need that overall site authority. So it's something we do focus on and continue to invest in. And again, as mentioned, we have 2 members focused just on this because it's a long-term value play. This isn't just about getting links to rank. It's really about getting your brand out there because Google looks for that. Are people talking about you? Are you the authority? So that's why we invest in that, and we're going to continue to invest in that. But just an example from some of those efforts, we've got 2 pieces of data-driven content that we put out there in the last month that have driven 500+ links for us. Forbes, Business Insider, eMarketer, Chamber of Commerce, and others covered the data. But it's not because we created the data, it's because we let them know about it. So do that outreach, do that PR, it's going to yield huge gains for you. And you want to get that velocity up. So in our case, we were kind of small from a backlink standpoint compared to our competitors. So what we leaned into is a velocity of this type of content to be winning in the now versus that historical view. And it's done very well where we're outranking and driving double traffic for some of the sites that have 3 times the total link volume as us. So focus on high quality links and velocity from a PR standpoint. And leverage other sites. Who ranks well for terms that matter to you? Review sites as an example. We rank for hundreds of thousands of keywords at TrustRadius that maybe you're buying via paid search, that if you were to be better covered on our site, we could send that traffic back to you. So that's an opportunity. But who else could be in ranking well that you could look at? Are there press, publication, blogs that rank for these keywords that maybe you have an opportunity to work with? One of the things we do is if we see our competitors mentioned, but we aren't, we'll reach out to whoever wrote about it and say why, and let them know who we are. And more often than not, they'll either add us to that content or realize that we're better than that competitor they were talking about and stop talking about that competitor and now start singing our praises. So again, leverage PR, talk to people, let people know who you are, get the word out, share your data, be a thought leader. And then one last thing on kind of the link building side, we built a lot of link assets. So there's things beyond content marketing that can drive value from a link standpoint. This is just one example of what we've done. Tools, awards, all kinds of different things you can build, but don't just build them into your product well, and build them in a way that they're shareable to your audience. So in this case, we run an awards program. We've built it into the product so that any links from that go back to our category pages, and we gain the value from that standpoint. We also make it easy for the people who win the awards to go promote it as well. We give them all the images, we give them anything, email signature, social media that they could use to go promote it. So we're enabling them to be part of our link building team as well, and working in success together. So keep that in mind with anything you do. And then what does all this lead to? This, success. Will everyone 3x their traffic if they follow this? Maybe not, but all of these little things you can try and will yield success. In our case, this is what it looked like, and we're going to continue. We want to keep moving this hockey stick up and to the right. And so 2 million, here we come. And that leads us now to an audience poll.
All right, everyone, I'm going to launch the poll really quickly. And if you could take a couple seconds just to answer, this is just really fun information for all of us. All right, we're going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results.
Awesome. So it looks like kind of the biggest takeaway is data analysis via Google Search Console, and I'm glad, because I do often see that people don't focus on that. Again, they're working on subsets of the data, or they're not layering it in, they're kind of analyzing it to the depth, and you're going to learn a lot through doing that. Beyond that, user-focused site improvements, and that's also something we need to remember. That we're thinking about Google, but again, it's the user. So always focus on the user, and Google will reward you in the end. Keyword research, content advice, and PR. One other question, it looks like someone said, I see this keyword, update this page to rank better, you see the results. Yes, we actually do see it like that. Challenge, 80% of the traffic comes from long tail. We found it challenging to optimize for just a keyword since our content is hyper connected with the category. This comes back to kind of that Search Console keyword analysis. Even if you're long tail, you're going to find those modifiers that you're doing well on and understand the quantity of keywords that are actually doing well for you. Do that to understand the modifiers. Go back and do that keyword research. You're going to find other terms in there that you can go after, so you can mine that long tail and start to create more of that content. There are ways to do that. You may not be able to go after those high value terms, but utilize that research to go after those modifiers and look at the long tail. There's another report we run that I didn't reference, where we're actually looking at the quantity of clicks based on the number of keywords in the query. Is there one keyword? Is it just a brand name? Is it 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? So that way you can understand the distribution of how much long tail are you getting or not. And knowing that then helps you to prioritize content as well. Let's see, do we have any other questions? Have I used the new Rising Retail Categories tool from Google? Yes, it is valuable. Hello, Pos, miss you too. I haven't used it enough to kind of talk about the value, but what I will say, anytime Google opens up data, there's something to be learned there. Wish I had a little bit more experience and give you a better answer than that. What are recommendations for gaining visibility for categories that aren't currently covered by any of the review sites? Want to be interested why they're not covered. If they're not, there may be a low volume opportunity. Review sites are typically going to go after anything that there's some type of volume, but if there's some other reason, short answer is you've got to become the expert in that. So, create all of the content that's going to be relevant. And then back to that last point on the digital PR side, make sure you're looking at the others who are relevant for the queries and starting conversations and becoming part of that world. You've really got to have the content and be an expert on it for Google to really give you that authority. So if you can focus on those two things, you should start to see yourself break through in categories. Should you use videos within blog posts as well? 100% rich media, whether it be video or images, and that's actually one of the transformations we're working on at TrustRadius, is to incorporate more rich media. We don't have enough of that, and we know it's valuable. Anytime you do a search on your mobile phone, pretty much every search result now has an image in it. So you got to keep that in mind, that rich media is everywhere and you need to incorporate it. So definitely, Joe, use video, use images wherever you can, but make sure they're valuable for the user. Don't just do an ugly image, don't do a terrible video. Again, it comes back to the user. How do you integrate SEM and other paid efforts? So we actually didn't do any SEM, we do no paid, but I will tell you, as a lot of our customers do. And in that case, you look at where are you with organic that you don't necessarily need to invest in paid, where there's not extra lift. And that's how we look at it is, are there places that we're winning on the organic side, or people that are winning that send traffic to us that we can de-invest in those areas? And we see that a lot. So we work with our customers. We're sending keywords back and forth to understand how we can target things for them that maybe they're spending a lot in paid search or they're not able to work well. So it just kind of depends, but SEM and SEO definitely go hand in hand. What content to update typically? Again, it's back to what's not ranking well and what's going to bring value. So, you've got something in position 10, it can be better. It's time to think about updating that and understanding what that click-through rate curve and what that search volume opportunity is going to help you prioritize all of that. And that's the way we look at it is what's the volume opportunity and the traffic opportunity for us, and then what's the value to our audience in getting that. Therefore, we can prioritize our content efforts that way. Words on the page, it definitely matters. From 2 points. One, you want to be, a thought leader, and back to the point of our reviews, we want long-form content because it's going to be more in depth, more elaborative. So there's no specific number that works, but as long as you're getting across and answering those keywords and those queries that you'll identify in that keyword research process, it doesn't matter how long it is, but we do find that it takes more content to typically answer all those questions. Let's see. Best promotional strategy, that's loaded. You got to figure it out. Take that one offline. How are we getting data into Google Sheets? Is it a custom script? So I referenced Supermetrics as one of the tools we do that with. $100 tool a month, and it's very user-friendly, very easy to do. There are other custom scripts you can use, but again, we pay to use Supermetrics. For that $100 a month is definitely worth it. Title tag tests at scale. In our case, we worked with our product team and engineering team to define how we do that, and worked with them for a way that they could modify those. That was really the only part that required much work. So I would say talk with your product and engineering teams, and they can help figure out ways to do that. See, there was a good number of months before you started seeing impact your work. How do you manage this conversation internally? Again, luckily we had a team that knew that SEO was a long-term investment, but it was something we needed to make. So back to the education piece, there's a lot of that, and just the more you can have people understand how that works, the better. And let's see. What do I think of Uber suggests? All the tools are great. As mentioned, we use SEMrush, Ahrefs, looking at others we can pull in via API. Research what keyword research tool finds the most in your industry. They all slant towards different areas. User-generated content is important, not just quality. What do we do to push for this and moderate it that makes it to a review page? That is a loaded question. There's a lot of about content on our site that will tell that, but we do have a deep process for acquiring, reviewing, and validating those, because we don't want junk to come through. So we've invested a lot in our product to do that. So I can take that one offline, or again, just read some of the about pages on TrustRadius and how we acquire that. What would I say to those who focus on PPC over SEO? I think this current environment is a big change for us in that budgets are getting cut from PPC. So I think it shows the value of SEO long-term and why it will be the evergreen producer, and it's something that is long-term and not a now type of thing. And so it's something you've got to invest in. It's quote unquote free traffic. And again, when the economy tanks like a time like now, it's there to save you when you've got to cut budgets and pull away from PPC. leverage that free traffic to drive business results. Final question here. Would you recommend using rating schema with FAQ for product pages with complexity, or would you choose just one? I would say go for both. With any of those structured data, Google's going to choose what they think is right for that query anyway. It's not going to guarantee to show. So make sure you test that out. Give them both, see which one they prefer, and lean into that way. And then thanks for the congrats on the success. What other strategies are we going to use to reach the next 2 million? It's a lot of the same. We're going to continue to focus on the user. We're going to continue to grow our content. We're going to continue to optimize the user journey. And then the other part being, we're going to make sure that everyone knows about us. So we want to be the leader. We believe we are the leader, and we're going to make sure we evangelize our story so that gets out in the market. And that's all you're hearing about us as it relates to B2B software buying.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Mark, so much for sharing all this super awesome information. For everyone who's still online, we will be sharing the slides as well as a recording of the presentation later today. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll hope you'll join us again.